I built this AI system that makes baby podcasts on autopilot, all using no code and AI. Because if you haven't seen them, over at TikTok, these Babyfied podcast videos, all generated using AI, are actually getting tens of millions of views. And what's interesting is they don't even have that many videos yet. So you can just see how powerful it would be once you're able to somehow automate this process. And the good news is now you actually can using AI, because with this workflow, you can just let AI vibe post for you and it will surprise you every day or even every hour with new videos such as this one.
Just in case you were wondering, in a mirror, you can only kiss yourself on the lips. Just saying.
So that video of Neil deGrasse Tyson has all been automatically generated using this workflow. And honestly, it's really cute, so it's no wonder that these videos have been blowing up recently over at TikTok. But basically what this workflow does is you can give it the URL of any TikTok channel and it will remix that channel's content and babyfy them using this new AI model that we'll be using in this tutorial. And if you stick to the end, I'll also share some ideas on how to monetize this type of content so that you too can create your own content business that's now becoming more and more accessible thanks to AI. And what's great is, since this is all no code, anyone can actually do it, even if you've never coded in your life before. And in this tutorial, we'll also use the least amount of jargon so that no matter your background, you can understand it and follow properly. Because all you really need to know is how to operate your keyboard and your mouse, and you'll be pretty well set. And AI automation is becoming bigger and bigger if you just look at Google Trends. So it's a good time to learn this new skill and be the core set of people who can take advantage of it in the months and years to come. So if that's a skill that you want to learn, then invest some time to watch this video, and for sure you'll learn something new that is also going to be of value to you in the long run. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Jay, and my mission here in RoboNuggets is to make AI easy to learn, no matter if you have a technical background or not. And to make this as easy as possible, I've actually collected all of the resources and prompts that you need here in this section in our community. And I wanted to specifically call out this blueprint file, which you can just download and import to the no-code tool that we are using. And that will create the automation for you without you even having to do anything. And if in case you're not yet part of the RoboNuggets community, then check that out just in the link in the video description. Because if you want to get started on learning about AI and automation, this is probably one of the best places to be in. Myself and other members here post regularly paid opportunities and partnership collaborations if you're looking to get your first client or get started with a content business as well. And we also have several events, some of which are even hosted by our community members, where we reward them with a free month of membership in return for their time and effort. So this is just one of the many ways by which we make the group accessible, especially for those who are contributing the most to the community. So if you want to be part of this movement, want access to more step-by-step tutorials like this one, each with their own ready-to-load automation blueprints that you can just run on the fly, then give the link in the description a go and see if the community is for you or not. Okay, let's get into this. So the framework of what we'll set up is very, very simple. We'll basically be creating two workflows in this case. One is the original Vids agent, which is basically going to get a list of videos that we will be babyfying, and then we will be creating the meat of this tutorial, which is the babyfyer agent. We'll be taking those original videos and then transforming them to these babyfied versions of themselves, which should be fun. So let's do the original videos agent first and why it's important. So when we are creating AI workflows, it's always good to have a vision of what our end in mind is. And at least for the original videos agent, it is basically this, a Google Sheet template where you have the videos that you want to remix fully listed out, along with their original captions, what their video URL is so that you can refer back to them, and more importantly, these audio and image URLs, which we will be feeding to the AI model to create the babyfied videos. So the question is, how do we automatically get these data without us having to go through each TikTok video one by one? So it's very simple. You just have this 3-node workflow that auto-populates that for you, and we'll be setting it up together. And the tool we'll be using is called n8n, which if you just go to this link, that will take you to n8n's homepage where you can click Get Started to sign up for a free trial. Now, very quickly, if you don't know what n8n is, it's basically an automation no-code tool similar to Zapier or Make.com if you've heard of those other ones. But if you just type those in Google Trends, you'll see that n8n has spiked in demand just because of how flexible it is with integrating a lot of these AI systems. And it's not actually that hard to learn if you have someone to guide you. Because once you sign up and get to n8n's dashboard, you basically just click on Create Workflow here at the top right. And then the first thing you should do is to rename this workflow with whatever you want. So for me, I'll just do that. And then for your very first step, you'll be adding a trigger, which in n8n's parlance is essentially going to be the node that triggers the whole automation. So it will dictate the regularity and the method of how this automation is triggered. So for this case, I'll set it to run once every month, and I'll explain why that is in the succeeding step. But if you just type that in, basically that will trigger this workflow once every month, depending on the schedule that you've set. And now the next node that you want to set up, which is the second to the last, is this HTTP request node, which is one of the most useful nodes in n8n because it's actually quite flexible. Because what it does is that it allows you to call on third-party tools using an API that exists outside of n8n, which we'll illustrate in a bit. But before we get into it, if you're new to n8n, it's probably a good idea to just step back to understand the design of working with this tool. Because if you open any node in n8n, it's actually the same thing. There's going to be an input section where you'll see all of the values and the data getting passed along from previous nodes. And then you have the config section, which is this green area that just defines how you would like this node to treat those input data that's coming in. It will then pass along this red section, which is going to be the output that is pushed to all of the succeeding nodes. So if we go back to our workflow here, you'll see that same design of working. And for this one specifically, it's just important to rename it so that we know what it does. And what this node does specifically is that it will get the latest TikToks of a specific channel. So you just rename that so that it's much cleaner. And then for the method, you want to set this to post, because what we'll be doing is to post a request to a third-party tool, the same way that you would post a mail. And then under this URL is going to be the URL of the service that we'll be calling on. And that service that we'll use to extract those TikTok videos is called Apify, which if you just click on this link, it will take you to Apify where you can sign up and also get some free credits that you can use to test things out. And in case it's your first time working with Apify, it's basically this very useful website that a lot of automators use to extract information and to scrape a lot of data. And a lot of those scrapers, which they're calling actors, are actually contributed by the community. That's why there's so many here that you can take advantage of. So if you know how to use Apify, then it will definitely level up your game when it comes to automations and AI. So when you sign up, you essentially want to go to this Apify store and look for the TikTok scraper. And you'll want to get this one by Clockworks, the one that has the most users as well. And if you can't find it, the link to that is just here in our community also. But once you get to that, you'll essentially go to this actor's setup page. And we'll go through this in a bit. But what you want to do firsthand here is to click on this API on the top right, and then click on API endpoints. And once you're here, look for the run actor synchronously and get dataset items and copy this URL by clicking on this icon. And then under this URL, just go ahead and paste that there. So just a note, this URL actually already contains your API passkey, which is something you should keepsake, because if someone else has it, then they can use your account as well. So for my case, for example, I'll just disable it after this tutorial. So now that you have information on which service you'll be calling on, the question now is what you will actually request from that third-party service, right? And to declare that, you basically just toggle on this send body, and then body content type here, you can just keep it as JSON, which stands for JavaScript object notation, and then specify body using JSON. And this is basically just going to be a standard format that this specific actor accepts. And to make it easy, here in the community, you can find this piece of JSON under the original Vids agent section, which you can just copy and change this to expression and paste here. And if I expand that very quickly, what this basically says is that it will get the videos in the last 30 days from this specific channel with a maximum number of videos of 100. And then everything else are just attributes to make sure we get the cleanest data. But important parts here is this TikTok profile handle, which for our case, we're using Neil deGrasse Tyson as an example, which if you're not sure where to find that handle, it's basically just here in their profile. And then the reason why we set this agent to run every month is because we're also getting this profiles TikToks for the past 30 days. So every month when it runs, it will have a fresh batch of content for you to remix. But obviously you can adjust that depending on the frequency of posting of your intended channel. So if we just click on test step here, you'll see that it outputted for us 9 items, which corresponds to 9 videos. And this is one of them, and there's a lot of information here. And if in case you encountered any errors, what you can do is just go to the actors page over at Apify and look under runs to inspect how that most recent run of yours performed and also to troubleshoot it if needed. But anyway, that is done, that we now have the information. And so the last step that you just need to do is to get the information that you just extracted and put them all in your Google Sheet template. So if you just search for Google Sheets here, what you just need to find is this action called append row in sheet. and then just rename this to something like log2 sheets if you want. And to set it up, you essentially just need to connect it to your Google account. So just click on create new credential if you haven't done that yet. And you can just sign in with Google here, which is quite seamless on n8n side. And then under document, you'll need to find the template that you're working with. And to make it easy, if you're part of the community, you can just click on this link and that will take you to a ready Google Sheets template, which you can just click on file and then make a copy. And that will create a copy of that template for you in your Google Drive. So once you have this, what you can now do is to find that document. So for me, it would be this one. And then from the sheet, go ahead and choose sheet 1 because that is the main sheet that we'll be working with. And then what n8n will do is fetch the columns there so that you have those cleanly mapped here. And so the only thing that we need to do is to map what we just extracted from TikTok here into our Google Sheets. So for caption, that's actually this text attribute, which you can just drag. You'd want to find this web video URL and drag it here. For the audio URL, you want to find this play URL under music meta over here. For image URL, we'll skip in a bit. I'll go to that in a second. For the original date, just grab this create time ISO. That's basically the date when this post was originally published, which you may be interested in tracking. And then for production status, just type in for production to indicate that it is not yet Babyfied. And then for this agent, you can just leave these columns be. Now, as you can see, we have 2 more columns to fill up. One is this ID, which if you go to our end in mind intention here, you can see that it's basically just an ID to track these ideas better. And it's just this simple Excel formula that grabs the row number and deducts 1 so that you get an ID that starts from 1 and then increases up. So what you can just do is to copy that, which we have in our community as well, and paste this here. And then under image URL, if I navigate to one of the cells there, you'll see that we also have an Excel formula, which I'll explain in a bit. But for now, you can just go ahead and copy that and paste that here. So now your whole setup is done. What you can now do is to click test step. And what it confirmed for me is that it just appended 9 items to our Google Sheet template, which if you go back to our sheet, you can see those cleanly laid out, which is perfect. Now, just to go back to the question of this image URL, you'll see that it's pointing to sheet 2. Cell C2. So what is that? So if we just navigate to that, it's basically this image file, which is coming just from this complicated looking formula. But all it really does is that it looks at this list at the left and then randomizes the values there. Because if I just open one of these up and click on them, you'll see that we have an image of a babyfied Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is actually going to be our source image to animate for the next agent that we'll be setting up. And if we click this second one, you'll see that it's just another image of Neil deGrasse Tyson babyfied in a different outfit. So what this all really enables you to do is to put in, let's say, 5 images here, and every video that your agent creates, it will use one of those images as a setting or an outfit of choice for that specific day that it runs, which we will see once we animate it. But now, obviously, the question is, how do you even get these links in the first place? And how do you get these images as well? So it's actually very simple. If you just get an image of the specific person that you are after, for me, I got this image as well as this image. And if you go to ChatGPT, upload that image and give it a prompt like this, which if you go to our community, you can grab a copy of that as well. What it will do for you is to create those images, which you can download and upload to a service like freeimage.host, which is basically a very simple way by which you can upload your images. So once these are done, you can go to these URLs. And then if you right click on that image, click on copy image address, that should now give you a URL that ends in an image file type, which for my case is .jpg. And that is now what you paste here in this image list. Now, obviously, you can automate this as well by using ChatGPT's image generation API. But because of the nature of the videos that we have in plan, you actually don't need new images every time, because what's important is that the script or what's being said varies between clips, but you can actually have just one driving image for one whole account. So you don't really need to automate it for this case. And anyway, you only need to do this once and you'll be pretty much set up. So there, once done correctly, you should now have a sufficient list of videos that you can remix to become babies, which is going to be our next step. So if we just look at our end in mind automation here, what's good is that the sections we'll set up are actually cleanly laid out step by step, where in the very first step, we'll just get those original video ideas that we loaded from our Google Sheet and load them here. We'll then upload the audio for that specific video into the AI model that we'll use, as well as the image, which also needs to be uploaded to that AI model. Then the magic of it happens here in the final step, which basically takes that image, processes that audio, and animates the image based on what is spoken, complete with lip syncing, which will be in this step here. So now if you go back to your n8n dashboard, click on create workflow once again, name this with whatever you want, add our trigger node, which in this case will be scheduling it to post once per day. And then for the next step, as mentioned, we'll be grabbing those ideas from our Google Sheets. So just find Google Sheets and search for Get Rows in Sheet action, and this should be set up for you now. For the document, find the same Google Sheet that you were working with. For me, it's this one. And then from the list, choose Sheet 1 because that's the main sheet. And then for the filter that you want to add, look for rows where the production status column is set as for production, which to recap is basically this column where it will grab the first row where this production status says for production. Because later, once this video has been remixed, we'll be marking this row as done. Now, to make sure you just return one row into n8n's processing, make sure to add return only first matching row here under option, toggle that on, and then just rename this to something like get original video so that you know how it works. And then if I click on test step, it now returned for me the very first video in that sheet, which you can preview in this video URL. If I just copy that.
Just in case you were wondering, in a mirror, you can only kiss yourself on the lips. Just saying.
So that TikTok clip is basically what we will be babyfying. So now if you just click away, that is basically the first step now done. So if you just clean this up, and if you want to add those sticky notes, you can just do a right click and add it here. And you can also change the color. So now the next steps we'll be doing is to ready our audio and images, which will be simpler than you think actually. So if we just extend this, we'll now do another HTTP request because we'll be calling on this service that will help us babyfy these videos. So for this node specifically, what you want to name it is something like create audio container. Because what it will essentially do is create a container in the service that we'll be calling on so that we can upload the audio of that TikTok to that container, which is an essential step for this service that we'll be calling on in a bit. But anyway, just change this method to post. And within this URL, if you head back to our community, you can just copy paste this URL and place it here. And what this is basically the URL of this service called Hedra, which if you go to hedra.com is basically one of those recent AI models. And at least for what we are doing, which is animating an image using a voiceover to drive it, they actually have one of the best ones at the market right now. So if you just sign up here, and just like any other AI model, for you to use their services, you will need an API key, which is going to be like your passkey to your specific account. So to set that up in n8n, just follow these steps, which you only need to do once, and it will save you some time later on as we build out the other nodes. So under authentication, click on generic credential type and look for header auth here. And under header auth, click on create new credential, rename this to something like Hedra credential so that you know what it does, and then type this out exactly, X API key, paying attention to the capitalization and also the lack of spaces, because if there's just one space in there, it's actually going to cause errors for you. And then under the value here, you actually need to get that in your Hedra account. So if you just sign up here and navigate to this URL, you'll go to this page where you can grab your API key, copy that in, and then paste the value here and click on save. And there, so now whenever we call on Hedra, which we'll be using a lot for in the succeeding nodes, you just need to set up your credential to be this header auth every time. Now, just an important note that currently to use Hedra's API, they are asking you to upgrade to a paid plan, which if you just look at that, the cheapest one is actually only $10 a month. So it's more accessible versus other models out there. So you can just select this and you'll be able to do everything in this video. But now that we know which service we'll be calling on, we have our passkey that allows us to call on that service. The question again is, what is the request that we'll be asking that service to do for us? And so to declare that, we just click on send body here. And again, body content type, just set as JSON and specify body using JSON. What you can do is to just copy this piece of text here, change this to expression and place that there. And this is very simple. Basically, it will just request Hedra to create a container for a file, which will be naming audio file in their servers. And you can actually rename this to whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And for the type, it needs to be an audio file, obviously. So if you just click on test step there, if it succeeds, it will now give you this ID, which is what we need to proceed to the next step, which is going to be another HTTP request. But this one's quite simple because all it does is really to just get your audio file from your Google Sheets template. So if you just rename that, the only thing you need to set up here is to keep the method as get, and under URL, what you want is this audio URL and place that there. And this is a long URL, but basically if you just copy it, place it in any tab, you can actually preview that.
Just in case you were wondering, in a mirror, you can only kiss yourself.
So as you can hear, it's just the audio of that TikTok that we just grabbed. And if we click on test step here, that will just translate that URL into this data file. That just means that now the file itself has been loaded to n8n and it can pass it along to Hedra, which we'll be doing in the succeeding step. So to finish off that audio portion, just find another HTTP request, change the name to upload audio so that you know what it does, change the method to post, and under URL, if you go back to our community and copy this under upload audio, you'll get this URL, which is the way by which Hedra accepts files that you want to upload. So under authentication, since you've set that up, just select the one that you have already set up under header auth, specifically your Hedra credential. And now for our request, it's now to upload this audio that we have on the left. So if you just toggle send body as on, but this time we'll be using a body content type of form data. And this is just as per Hedra's documentation. And so for the parameter type, change this to an n8n binary file, which is essentially just a file, and have the name as file. And for the input data field name, change it to data, just to match n8n's naming convention here so that it knows what data to pull. So if you just click on test step, when it succeeds, you now have that audio file properly uploaded to Hedra's servers, which is what you need to proceed to the next step. Because for this next step, it's the same thing, but this time we'll just be uploading the image instead of the audio. So to make that simple, what you can actually do is to just select all of these and hit on Control D to duplicate them and just place them there. And you can connect it like so. And now you can just set up all of these in turn. So for this very first one, it will now be to create an image container instead of an audio container. And the only thing you need to change is this body section, because instead of an audio file, we'll be uploading an image file. So if you just copy this part in our community page, place that there, and click on test step, this now created for you a container within Hedra servers where you can upload things. And so now this next step, instead of getting the audio, we'll be getting the image again from our Google Sheet, which if you just scroll down to the bottom, you can just remove this and drag this image URL. Because if you remember, this image is our image of Lil deGrasse Tyson, whom we will animate in just a bit. So click on test step there, and you'll be able to load that actual file into n8n servers, which you can actually also preview. So that's good. And same as the other one, you can just go ahead and upload that image. In fact, everything here remains as is because now this data, n8n will be getting it from the directly preceding node, which is this image of Lil deGrasse Tyson. So if you just click on test step there, a successful run will show you all of this information, but that basically just confirmed for you that you have now uploaded it correctly. So there you go. So if you want those helper notes, you can also just drag them in so that you know which part does what. And finally, we'll now be setting up this final cluster of nodes that will allow to animate our Lil deGrasse Tyson for the final Babyfied video. And so to do that, what you can do to make it easy is to duplicate one of these nodes by hitting Control D and just connect it like so. And if I open that up, what this node will now do is to create the video itself. So let's rename it as such. But this time the URL is actually going to be different. And it's different just by which Hedra set up their APIs. So if you just copy this and place that there, that would be the correct URL to request for their service for animating your given image. The credential can remain the same, the one that you already set up, but the request obviously will need to change, so you can just delete that one and copy the JSON request here under create video. Make sure to change that to expression, paste that, and if I just open that up, what that basically does is to request Hedra, specifically this AI model, which is basically the one that animates your image, to use this specific image, which is the Babyfied Neil deGrasse Tyson, and this audio of him speaking as the driver, and output a video that is following this text prompt and this set resolution and aspect ratio, which is vertical. So very important, you can see that the nodes are red here. And the reason why that is because it actually can't find this node that I have, which is named create image container. So it needs to match exactly, because if I look at my nodes here at the left, it actually has capital C and capital I in there. So that is causing the errors. So to correct that, that's very easy. You can just delete this whole thing and then drag the ID of your create image container and put that from within the double quotes. And that should give you the ID correctly here at the result. Because what this basically does is it's a dynamic value, right? So it's telling n8n to grab at the specific data point from this specific run of this workflow, which in this case, the result would be this. And then the audio ID, if I just scroll down, you'll see that it's the same thing. So I wasn't able to capitalize this. So in fact, if I just name this correctly, that would also result to green dynamic values, which we want. Cool. So now if we click on test step, you'll receive this output, which now tells you that Hedra is now busy at work developing your video under the hood. And so what we just need to do is to wait a bit until that video has been completed for us. So to do that within n8n, you literally just need to add a wait node, which later on we'll be setting to something like maybe 5 minutes or so. But for now, just to proceed to the next step, just set it as 1 second so that you can click test step. And what that will do is just pass along those values from the previous node, and so that we can continue building our workflow here. So now last few nodes to set up, what you can do is to just duplicate this create video node that you created, link that correctly. And if I open that up, this will now be just to get that video that Hedra has generated for us. So rename that as such, change the method to get. And then for the URL, once again, it's different. So it's kind of complex how Hedra has set this up with multiple URLs. But to make it easy, under get video here, you can just copy this URL, place that there. And what that will give for you is this specific URL with this dynamic value, which is just this ID section here, because that points specifically to your run that you just submitted. So with this, we actually don't need to send a body request because we're just getting an item. So just click on test step there. And there, you actually can see that the status of this has been completed. And you now have this URL, which if you go to the table view, you'll be able to see the full URL, and it's quite long. But now, if you go to any browser tab, that will actually download a video for you, which you can now preview.
Just in case you were wondering, in a mirror, you can only kiss yourself on the lips. Just saying.
Okay, that is very cute. So now that you have this, you're actually done. But just to make this workflow a bit stronger, you can see that we actually have 2 final nodes here, and they're very simple. So I'll just show how to set them up. So if you go to the next node and type in an if function, what this basically does is you can set a condition where if this value 1 is equal to value 2, then it will proceed to the next node. And if not, we can reroute it, which I will show in a bit. So this is useful because what you can do is to grab this status and declare the condition as if the status is complete, which you can just type. And if you click away, that will now provide you true routes. So if the status is not yet complete, it will usually say processing. That basically means that we didn't wait long enough for Hedra to finish the video for us. So maybe you have a pretty long video. So what you can just do is to map this false route back into the wait node. And what that has done is that if the video is still processing, then we just go back and wait a bit more. And then we try to get the video again. And then once the status says complete, we now go to this true route where we will add the final Google Sheets node, because the one that you want is this update row in sheet action. And we can just rename that to Babyfied video. Click on rename. You can find the sheet you were working with and sheet 1 as well. And what we'll just do here is to update some of these columns so that we can mark this row specifically in our template as done automatically by the agent itself. So to do that, you first just need to execute previous nodes. So if you click on this test step icon for the if function, that is now mapped to true because we know that the status of that video is complete. And we have all of these good data that we are ready to pass along. So the things you want to add here is this ID, which you actually need to scroll down to the very bottom for your very first Google Sheet node and drag the ID from there to here. And if it returns an error on this item, you can just type in first with open and close parentheses, and that should work much better. And the reason why we map that is because this is the row that we will be updating in our Google Sheet tracker. And then for the other things that you want to update, you just want to set the production status as done for this specific row. And this remix URL, if you scroll all the way to the top, you can just grab this URL that we just previewed and put it there so that we have a log of where the final video is uploaded. And then for publishing status, set it as for publishing. And then if I click now on test step, once that is done, you can now go back to your Google Sheet template and you can see that our automation have marked this as done. And I've also put in our video URL here. So the next time that automation runs the next day, it will now go to the second row and so on and so forth. And there you go. You now have this workflow completed. So the final steps to adjust this wait node to wait for something like 5 minutes so that you give the time for the model to generate, and then set this workflow to active once you're ready. So now the remaining question is, now that you have this video as well as a URL of where it's stored, how do you actually take this video and auto-publish it to TikTok or to Instagram or wherever you want? And the answer to that is actually in this lesson called the Ultimate Publishing Agent, so watch that if you haven't yet. But if you look at that workflow specifically, you'll see that it begins with a Google Sheet node that takes in a video URL, such as the one you just generated, and pushes it out to YouTube, to Instagram, TikTok, and wherever you want. And so what you can do to enrich this workflow further is to just go ahead and copy this whole set of nodes, paste it here in your baby videos agent. And if in case you want to connect them together, the only thing that you need to do is to map this last node into this first node of the publishing agent. Then just disable the ones that you don't need here by doing a right click or by clicking on D to deactivate them. And now you have an AI agent that not only creates the videos, but also auto-publishes them on the schedule of your choice. And if you want to see what that looks like, you can see here in my test TikTok account that it got uploaded correctly using the publishing agent. So there you go. You have now set up 2 agents. You've learned how to extract data using Apify, as well as how to remix videos into Babyfied videos, which actually, if you think about it, the skill to remix content, it's going to be important in the next coming months to years, especially for these content businesses. And just as a bonus, what's interesting about these content businesses is that there are actually several ways by which you can monetize them. And so I'll just go through 3 quick ones for today. The first one, which is most obvious for all, is the various creator programs of these social channels, which TikTok has actually increased recently to something like 40 cents per 1,000 views. And some of these channels have like millions of views, which is not surprising because if you look through the comments of each of these, despite them being AI generated, they are genuinely entertaining. So that's one obvious way to monetize. But the other one, which most people don't realize, is that you can actually use this to take advantage of affiliate programs that some content creators have. So for school.com communities, for example, most of them actually offer a pretty high commission for every person you refer. So for our community in RoboNuggets, we set it to be the highest maximum possible here at school, which is 50% commission for every person referred. And that's commission is for life. So you can potentially get passive income from this. And what you can do is to just copy this URL and use that as your link in bio so that once you get a following, you will actually drive traffic to support those school communities while also getting a commission in return. So if you're not decided on what specific niche or content you want to remix, and then maybe have a browse on the different school communities here and see which of them are actually offering an affiliate program and also have a large TikTok or Instagram presence, then you can just approach them to get permission to remix their content for them. So that's the second one. And the third one is that remember that you can always sell this account. And if you're thinking about who you can actually potentially sell this to, well, the answer to that is very simple. So if you see, for example, this page by Dylan, who has built his following deliver news around current events, what this person has done is actually turn his content and remix it into a news baby page. And so now this person also has a huge following, is broadening the reach of Dylan while also earning some passive income, which you can see he put in a buymeacoffee.com link here in his bio. So if I were a content business like Dylan, who has a lot of content that shows his face, then what I can potentially do is to hire someone in order to create this page for me so that I can broaden my reach as well, or even buy this page completely if I want a secondary account for this specific niche. So there are probably more ideas out there, but that is just some of the ways by which content businesses now are actually turning content and attention to that content to a real business. And this is not really new. If you go back like decades ago, attention has always been an economy by itself. But the difference back then is that it used to be centralized in like 20 or so big players in the entertainment industry. But now that people have more choices on where to pay attention to, then the rewards coming from that attention is also being dispersed to a larger group. So the best thing you can do now is to be part of that movement so that you can take advantage of what's possible now as well. So there you go. If you like this content, do give a like and subscribe. It helps us a lot. And all the resources we talked about, plus more, is just in the RoboNuggets community, just in the link in the video description. We have tons more lessons here around AI and automation. And you'll also get access to a growing network of AI practitioners, where we actually post a lot of paid opportunities and partnership collabs here. Some are coming from myself, who are mainly people who are reaching out to me because they want to rebuild their RoboNuggets lessons that I talked about, but they simply don't have time to do it. And so they're looking to hire. And here you can see we also have several events where we actually do these sessions that are hosted by the members themselves, and in return, they get a free month of membership. So that's just one of the ways by which we make this group accessible to our most active and contributing members. So if you want to be part of that community and movement, as well as access to more step-by-step tutorials like this, all with their own ready-to-load automation blueprints in n8n or even make.com, then have a look at the RoboNuggets community just in the link in the video description if that interests you. That's it for this one. Thank you for watching.